Hey, welcome back to I'm Going In. I'm Todd Blyleven, your host, and I am absolutely thrilled once again and very blessed to have an incredible guest. His name is Matt Davis. Over a decade of law enforcement experience, Matt began his career as a patrol deputy and quickly rose through the ranks, becoming a leader known for his empathetic approach. He served on specialized teams with tackling narcotics, vice crimes, even human trafficking, and working alongside agencies like the DEA and Department of Homeland Security, which is absolutely amazing. Your dedication, his dedication to public service earned him a meritorious service award for his efforts on the Rich Boy Gang Task Force, which I want to hear more about this one. But now he's a lieutenant, supervising a team of sergeants, deputies, and others pursuing advanced studies in leadership and organization development. And he's just really sharing, he's out there sharing powerful insights and transforming policies through authentic connection and empathetic leadership. So, Matt, you've been a resilient warrior. You've embraced the importance of mental health, and I like to think of it more as resilient advocacy, strength, empowerment. But thank you for being on I'm Going In. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we got a chance to talk a little bit, everybody. For those that are just listening, just share stories of our somewhat relatability. Matt, you're in Colorado
That's correct.
now, and so for those that can't see Matt, he's got about I don't even know how many challenge coins he has above him with the word believe. So I want to learn more about that. If you could share that. But what I always like to asking, our first responder guests, our military guests, what sparked the interest of you wanting to get into law enforcement?
Yeah, law enforcement, Todd, is my second career. I actually was doing, I did 15 years in the auto finance industry. So I did everything from repossessing cars to giving out loans. And my final job title was director of internet lending for a company. And during that time, that was sort of a high stress job for me. And my spouse at the time signed me up for Citizens Police Academy at a
Hmm.
local agency here in town because I've always wanted to drive a police car. So at that point, I got to go every Tuesday and Thursday night for like 2 months to the PD and learn about police departments and got to go on a ride along, got to go on a couple ride alongs. And after that, I was sort of hooked. And it took me about 3 to 4 years to get in shape, to test with different agencies, to finally, well, that company finally walked in my office and said, "We're doing away with your job." And the next day after, I went down to the police academy at the community college and signed up to go to the police academy. So I just sort of went all in and said, "Hey, I'm going to pay for myself to go to the police academy." I had been a pretty poor college student to that point in my life, so that was a big deal. Um, so that's what I did, and I graduated in 2010, and then I started at the current place where I'm at now in 2011. So it was sort of um, I've never looked back. It's just one of those things I felt like um, I really, probably the first career I actually chose.
Wow. What did you like about it?
I like the independence, and I liked helping people and the complex problem solving that we do.
Yeah,
And just showing up and trying to help people from a place of positivity.
that's so cool, man. I mean, yeah, you, it, I just love that. You're diving in to just serve others and you enjoy that. And then the fact that, you can make a career out of it. And what about the camaraderie with others and, kind of that brotherhood piece that sometimes you don't get in a corporate setting? How was that?
It's definitely different because you start at the police academy level, and like the guys that were my table mates, we've all gotten rank now, and when we see each other, that just like we're just starting right back up, and always we'll talk about what went on at our table at the police academy or what happened with this or that. So that's
Yeah.
always great. I've been super blessed to be on a bunch of specialty teams, and once you're on those specialty teams, you have a bond with those people. And my best friends are the guys I hang out with, are the people I work those cases with. And it's just a different thing. Like you see life from a different perspective when you do law enforcement or policing. And, they're just things that we all see, and we got to rely on one another to make sure that if I call for help, you're going to come and help me.
How do you think that your career prior to getting into law enforcement helped you, in those first few years of being an officer?
Knowing how to talk to people. Because my
Mm,
other career, when you go out and you have to repossess, like I think I was on the job maybe 3 or 4 weeks when I had to repossess my first car. So I'd call the person and say, hey, pay your bill. And then they tell me, whatever they would tell me, no, I don't have the money, or they'd be really mean or whatever, or cuss me out, or give me a bum check or whatever. And then I'd have to go repossess their car. Um, I already knew how to talk to people and sort of show a little bit of empathy.
mhm,
Ironically, when I was a collection supervisor, I just got mirrors for each one of my everybody on my team for their computer monitors. And I said, could you guys just smile when you make a phone call? And
mm.
it was amazing. I wish I used to know the stats, but our collections our delinquency went way down, and the amount of money we collected on a daily basis went way up because everybody looked in the mirror and smiled and made their phone calls.
I think that's, you're touching on something. I mean, and not that I want to make sure we're getting into your stories, but just the whole mantra of, being an officer, right? I think the biggest misinterpretation of today's public think that when you guys have your pre-meetings to go out and get in your squad cars and go off and tackle the community, right? It's, oh yeah, we're gonna go write tickets and we're gonna go, arrest all these bad guys and we're looking for all this stuff. And it's not that. Like you're literally going out to service the public. You're out there as a provider, and all the other stuff that happens that you guys get involved with. It's not just about arresting people, it's about trying to help the homeless find a place, right? You're talking to the people on the streets, you're talking to community business leaders and servicing, people and listening to them and just being that positive force out there, knowing that, hey, we're here for security and strength, and we're here to talk to people if we want to be approachable. um, Going back, like what you're saying, even like with the empathy piece, I'm seeing that a lot more now, across the country in different departments. What's been your take as you've been with law enforcement for the amount of years you have and all the things that you've seen, the differences between those pre-meetings, before when you first signed up and going out and getting in your squad car to now? Is there more emphasis on, hey, public interaction, make sure you're smiling more because of you guys all being video cameraed all the time and everything else? Or, um, because where I'm going with it is your people.
Right.
And everybody has bad days. I've met
Hmm.
athletes that are complete jerks. I've met business people in my work that are complete jerks. I've met cops. Everybody has, but why? Right? We're having a bad day. So is there more emphasis, more education now coming down into the law enforcement community on one-on-one interactions with people, how to deal with your stress, um, while tackling the day-to-day job?
Right. So to answer a little bit of the question, it'll be multi-part for me is,
Yeah.
um, you know, 10 years ago, me talking about being an empathetic leader, I would be viewed as super weak. And
Hmm.
I would have gotten I would have been told by, somebody, hey, you need to scale back the empathy thing. We need to get the job done. We need to do this or that. And don't talk about empathy because empathy is weakness. So, from that standpoint, which all the research shows that's not true. Like you can be a strong, empathetic leader and be able to do that.
Right.
Um, from a community standpoint, I want them to know, like in our briefings, there's a lot more laughing going on in briefings
Mhm.
than there are anything else. Um, because we're getting together, like, yes, we're relaying information about, hey, make sure you're doing this in your report, make sure you're docking your body worn camera, make sure you're turning on your body worn camera, this type of thing. It's not, hey, let's list off all these things. Um,
Mhm.
and it, like 70s cop shows, like Hill Street Blues, stuff like that, like Chips, all those things. You see the sergeant up there giving the briefing. It's very much like now we've got emails, everybody's getting emails. So it's not as much, hey, you got to get your tablet out and write what's going on. But it's just to
Mhm.
get together for the day, check in with where everybody's at, let them know what's gone on so far today. Maybe we've got something going on. Maybe there's a technical issue that's going on that we're going to have to deal with, or maybe there's a weather event or that kind of thing. Just getting everybody in the same room and making sure everybody knows what their work assignment's going to be for the day and that kind of stuff. So it's just a check-in time, and it should be pretty loose. It should be pretty
Yeah.
loose. And, if we had something from the night before, then we'll sit down and debrief what went on the night before, or talk, do some briefing trainings about case law or tactics or anything like that, or just ask everybody, like I always ask, anybody do anything fun for the weekend? And
Mhm.
I'll have uh it's always amazing because I'll get teammates that are always like, well, I wasn't going to share this, but I'm going to share this now. And it's things that you would think that they would be proud to share. But sometimes we're very private people, law enforcement
Mhm.
people, and that's even to our people that we work with on our teams, because oh, it's a trust environment, but it's not all the time a high trust environment because our teams change all the time from
Mhm.
year to year. So, different assignments, different levels of camaraderie that are going on.
Yeah, it's such a interesting topic when you talk about, law enforcement officers wanting to have privacy, but so does everybody else.
Hmm.
You know, I'm not going to go into someone's office and then ask them what their name and address and ID number is. They're going to be like, "What are you asking me all this question? Oh, why?" I'm not going to talk to my insurance person about that. I'm not going to go to the grocery store clerk and say, "Hey, what's your first name, full name? Give me your badge ID." They're
Hmm.
going to be like, "What are you talking about?" But we find it acceptable, and this is not a political show by any means, and we're not going to go down that path. But I think, the empathy is the biggest part here, right? And it goes both ways.
Hmm.
It goes from an officer's perspective of showing empathy to someone that's struggling, that might be going through a challenge in their life. But yet the law is the law, so you have to uphold that. That's your job and duty to our community and our public safety. And thank you to you and every other law enforcement officer out there that's going above and beyond, wearing the badge of blue and walking that line of putting themselves out there for our safety. Because otherwise, we wouldn't live in the land that we live without you. So it's but on the other side of it, you have to show empathy towards those officers too.
Hmm.
And, at times, like I've seen some video clips where like an officer might look like he's pretty irritated or she might be irritated coming up and asking questions. And the person actually stops and says, "Hey, can we just stop for a second? Like, I know I did something wrong with traffic stop or whatever, but can we just like take a deep breath? Cause
Hmm.
I want, you seem like you're irritated." And they're like, "Yes, thank you. Hold on." Like, okay, let's reapproach this. And I think it goes both ways. And so stepping into that, um, you've done some pretty amazing things in your career already. So it's really cool to hear that like 15 years of your life already was in kind of this business part of it. But like DEA and some of
Hmm.
the other task force that you've been with, having a lot of friends in law enforcement all over, those are not easy assignments to be asked to be a part of. Um, how did you adapt going from like the street cop to, the gang enforcement to, just being asked on all these things? What was that like? And how did you handle those, the constant change in life? Because it must have been difficult on you and your family too, right? Different mindsets all the time.
Yeah, I'm super lucky. I think I worked my total time on work pushing a radiator when I was when I was a new officer was probably like no more than like 20 months. And I had a lieutenant come up to me and say, I think you would be great on this undercover team that we have. You should put in. Actually, the first
Wow.
time he called me, I was on vacation at my parents' house, and I'm like, I'm not going to do it. Like, I'm really having fun just doing the job. Um, and then a few months later, the job opened again. I had this rule in my other job, in my other career. If a boss asks you twice to put in, that second time you needed to decide if you were going to put in or just not complain about it any longer and just say it wasn't the right opportunity. So I put in, I assessed, and I was selected to the team, and I started on there in 2013. And, it was when I got to that team, it was sort of like it was a quasi, sometimes we were working in uniform, sometimes we were not. We couldn't have beards, we couldn't do any of that stuff. And then over
Mm.
time, when I was on that team, we had a really good leader, but we had an amazing group of people that were really talented. And there were a bunch of teams coming together, merging together at the same time. Um, and we were at the right place at the right time, and things were changing in the landscape here in the Denver metro area for law enforcement. And we got good at one thing, and that one thing led us to uh, get much better at people would just come and talk to us because we were very good at surveillance. We were really good at as a surveillance team. And so DEA reached out to us, other places reached out to us, and I just totally lucked in to getting assigned to DEA. Like, it was a temporary assignment. I used to make the jokes. I've got it here in my office. I had had a previous bankruptcy in my other job, so I would have, it was not far enough away from my bankruptcy for me to fit the background to be actually a legitimate TFO. Like, I was just a temporary TFO at in any of these places where I would go because I couldn't be an official TFO because of my financial issue. the the thing was is I got really good at doing paperwork, and I was the guy that could do a lot of paperwork, do a warrant, like sort of do those things. And I know that's not the super glamorous thing because all of us want to be like the running and gunning guy doing SWAT rolls and shooting people and doing all those car chases and stuff like that. That wasn't my bag. So I was super lucky to get assigned to do a wire case with DEA, and we worked 9 months, and that was an awesome experience. And not a lot of people get the opportunity to do
Wow.
that. Um, and then right after that, I got assigned to go to the RBG task force, which Rich Boy Gang was a gang that is still here in Denver, but it was mostly juveniles, and they were going around and they were doing a lot of robberies to gun stores and different um, marijuana facilities and things like that. And we ended up, I think, in that one we took off, and they were actually shooting and killing a lot of people at different events around town.
Wow.
Um, and they were sort of had a lineage of violence. And I was really proud of my work on there. I think that was the fastest time. We had somebody barricade themselves, and I wrote a warrant and got it signed by the judge in less than 45 minutes. So that was the
Oh,
fastest I
geez.
ever got a warrant done. So I was very excited
Yeah.
about that, about getting that done. But that was a great opportunity. And then in 2016, I got to work on, we were a swing state, so we helped with Secret Service. And I got to do some details with President Clinton, former President Clinton, and with Hillary Clinton when she was here, and different people. And that's a great opportunity to be able to do that. Even if you don't vote for those people, you actually get
Yeah.
to see, you get to see what that's all about and get to see what
Yeah.
Secret Service does. And Secret Service is a whole nother animal about what they have to deal with, and looking at those different events. And I was a negotiator for 5 years too, so SWAT hostage negotiator. So I got to
Mm.
do all that. So I've had a really great career. Like, but I will tell you from a mental health standpoint, when I was at the point where I actually had to ask for mental health help, I really thought I was a fraud. Like I really
Mm.
had suffered from syndrome of really going to that point where I was not very um, I think I've said on a couple other podcasts, if I would have arrested the top guy on the FBI's wanted list, I would have thought that I was still not very good cop. And
Wow.
I have some very good cases that I've been part of that been able to really you help people and help them get the justice that they needed.
So I mean, uh, do you find that that officers, a lot of them feel the same way that you felt in terms of having that somewhat of an imposter syndrome? Taking credit for where credit is due, but not wanting the credit.
Yeah, I think that they really like I really wanted to be seen and heard. I think
Hmm.
most people just want to be seen and heard. And
Yeah,
a lot of times we don't spend the time as leaders to ask people how they want to be seen and heard and like what their
yeah,
definition of help is and what their definition of trust is.
yeah.
And at that point, I think I just had a lot of things going on, and it wasn't just at work, Todd. Like, you talked about relationships. I, most of my career, my cell phone has been at my hip because I've been on an on-call type of situation of doing, from when I was a supervisor in investigations, I was part of the officer involved shooting team to go out and do investigations with those things. And you can never plan when those are going to happen.
Yeah.
Um, Critical events. You never know when these critical events are going to happen, and it might take days and days and days. So that does take a toll, and you sort of see the gray in life. A lot of people like to
Mhm.
just say life is very black and white, and when you work in these type of jobs, you find out that it's very gray,
Mhm.
and um, justice is not always going to be served like you think it should be served. Because a judge could decide to give a person 2 years when you think they should get 20 years.
Yeah.
Got to figure out what's in your control and what's not in your control. And sometimes that gets
Mhm.
very blurred for people and they end up getting very jaded. So,
Such a great point. That's
from
such a
that
great point.
standpoint, so I'm very upfront, uh, I'm divorced and, I'm trying to I'm rebuilding my life and relationships and things like that. But I'm very upfront. I have one child that chooses not to speak with me. I have another child that we have a great relationship. So, um, do I have moments where I'm like, oh my God, I wish I didn't do that job? Um, and wonder if my family would be different? Yes. Hell yeah, you have those comment, you think those things in your head, but for me, I'm very glad on what's happened in my life to get me to where I'm at because now I can come out and be talking about this with other people because I've not had to go through a super traumatic event like you have or a lot of other people that are listening to this podcast or watching it where they've had to deal with shooting somebody or dealing with anything like that. Usually a lot of my trauma has to do with the investigations that went on after the fact and
Mhm.
having to get into that. And there's a lot of stuff after the fact with that of just getting into all that and trying to put two and two together to try to get justice for a murder victim or for try to put the pieces together on a murder suicide or something like that.
You bring up a number of amazing points, and I want to try to tackle a couple of them, and then expand on one in particular. But you talk about just how we deal with our own kind of version of success, and the credibility we want or we don't want through a case or through a good job in a board meeting or whatever else, right? Everybody has their own definition of what that means to them and how that uplifts them or what they're looking for from senior leadership and everything else. And the bottom line is just positive recognition for their efforts, right? But the other
Mhm.
piece that you touched on, which is I'm so thank you for being so open, with sharing all of your details. But police officers, we all have lives outside of our job. We all have stress. And sometimes we can't control what our passion is, our love for what makes us tick every single day, the job, the amount of effort that we put into that to serve our brothers and sisters, whether it's in law enforcement or our coworkers in a board place, it's who defines us in that moment, right? We're there, we're doing our best we possibly can, and sometimes our friends, our family, our social following, whatever that is, maybe they don't relate to that excitement that we have that really allows us to thrive and be the person that we want, right? And we can't control that. And sometimes that separation happens, right?
Hmm.
But I want to like touch on one of the bigger pieces that you've been kind of talking about is when you look at firefighters, for example. Okay, firefighters go out in a team of five. They go experience a traumatic event. And when you mention trauma, like shooting, as well as anybody, you don't have to be in a mass combat zone. You don't have to be in a situation where I was in where, your boots on the ground seeing people getting unfortunately shot or shot at, right? You don't have to be in that. It could be your first call and you got into some argument with a person, and now walking away you experience trauma, and the next time that you're going to go up and approach that call, you're like constantly getting this traumatic feeling. Or you hear the sirens, or like you and I were talking about before, you hear certain triggers that send you
Hmm.
back to a particular call or a conversation. That's trauma, right? Anybody can have trauma. So there's levels of it, but my level of trauma can be different than your level of trauma, right? So I
Right.
think that's really important to touch on. But when you talk about like, when you look at first responders and they go out and they're like a team of five, they go experience this traumatic event. A lot of times firehouses will be that safe house. So they come back to their
Hmm.
firehouse as long as they don't get called, which,
Hmm.
most of the time I believe they generally have an opportunity to go back, but they go
Hmm.
back as a unit. They go sit down in their kitchen or in their safe place and they talk about things. I've even talked to some first responder firehouses where they'll go get like a cake, and it's
Hmm.
not to celebrate. It's just that's their tradition. They just kind of everybody gets a piece. And by the time the cake's done, they've all spoke about how they feel and they move on. But they're experiencing that trauma as a team, right?
Hmm.
When you look at law enforcement, we are so underserved across the country in terms of supplying that empathy right away after a call is made where it might be elevated on some level, whatever that is,
Hmm.
to make sure that that single officer that's getting back in that single vehicle, especially the guys or men and women that are riding single, that they're okay, because you guys are going from call to call to call, and it could
Hmm.
be a cat in a tree to a violent crime or something else, a child domestic, whatever that is, right? But it's trauma to trauma to trauma. And where's the break in between? And because we're so short staffed sometimes, you don't have the opportunity to like, hey, take five, take 10, whatever. But my question is on two parts. One, what do you see law enforcement today trying to do, because things are more empathetic? The word empathy is out there more. It's more tough to raise your hand and say, I need help, which I'm a firm believer in. You can be a damn lion and I'll fight you in any corner. I will do everything I can to save your life. I will lay my life on the line, but I also can say, I need help. But what do
Hmm.
you see law enforcement doing to try to help the individual call to call and make sure that everybody's sound in terms of their mental health? The other part to that is, how do you see those task forces that you've been on where it's almost similar to a firehouse where you're going out and like you're having maybe your meals before in a group of 8 or 10, and you're going out to these wiretaps or whatever you're doing as a specialized unit, totally different than being that single cop, right? So,
Yes.
what are you seeing from a lieutenant's perspective on the day-to-day guy or person, not being gender specific, but your day-to-day officer? And then what do you see on a team side, and how does that interact from a mental health perspective?
The super complex question. So I'm gonna start with
Good.
a story. I'll start with a story first of all. Um, like from trauma responses, when I was working, I'll just talk about my experience.
Yeah.
I was always deathly afraid of dead bodies because I had never ever seen a dead body since because I had never seen a dead body till I was in my late 30s when I became a cop. So I was deathly afraid I was going to throw up. So every time I would go to a dead body call, I made it where I went and ate after. So I would do a dead body call and then I go and eat. That's still today. If I got a call and I had to go out and do an investigation, that's just the way that was a coping mechanism that I had,
Mm.
just a personal one that I just decided. Now, over time, and I've been very upfront, I don't blame anybody else for my toxicity because my toxicity and my relationship with myself was all about me talking badly about myself, right? And not seeing me, not giving myself value and having a lot of negative talk. So that gets to the second story of probably the busiest day I've ever had as in my entire career. It started on New Year's Eve in 2017, and um, I got a page out at like 7:30 in the morning saying there had been a shooting, multiple officers shot, one has been killed. Show up to this command post. At that time, I was sort of the intel guy, so they were like, "Hey, get in this room and start giving us all the intel that you can on this person." I start working on that. Um, I had some of my friends I talked about that were my table mates in the police academy work for this agency. It was not the agency I worked for, and they were still unknown. I knew that they had worked that shift before because we had talked a few days before. So I was very worried if one of them was going to be one that they're going to come in the room and say this person is dead. So I do that for most of the afternoon. I had to the assailant on that he actually had videotaped the whole thing and streamed it on the internet on Periscope. So my
Wow.
job was to get that taken down. So I worked with Twitter and to get that taken down during that day. And then I just there was no debrief. There was no debrief that day. I had done some interviews of people that actually worked on some of the deputies that had gotten shot, and um, I it was on a day when I think there was a football game or something, and I called my buddy. I'm like, hey, can you meet? Can we just meet to watch this football game? Now I will tell you through what was going on in my personal life, I was in the midst of trying to like there was a bunch of stuff going on in my personal life where I just didn't want to be at home a lot during that time because of the relationships that were going on there. And um, I finally get home, go to sleep. I get paged out like at uh, 9 o'clock at night. So I've been up, I've watched the football game, I've gone home, take a little bit of a nap. I get paged out. Uh, Marine veteran is on the top of his roof talking about throwing himself off his roof, and I'm out
Mm.
negotiating one on one. That's how I know where I will always know where I was when 2018 happened because I'm negotiating with this guy on the roof,
Wow.
and then doing that till you know probably 1 a.m. to 1:30, go home, go to sleep. I get paged out again at 8:30 in the morning the next morning on New Year's Day
Jeez.
to help out on a murder investigation. Uh, a gentleman had strangled his wife and attempted to bury her in the backyard and then put her in a carpet. And so I'm dealing with that all
Wow.
day. So I got a ton of overtime that day, but
Yeah.
that's just one 24 hour, a little bit like if you want to look at a snapshot of a 48-hour period of what's going on. And at that point, I didn't know well enough to be able to do that and what to do to ask for help because I was just running call to call to call. So and there were other teams I was dealing with in that time that were not just my regular team
Yeah.
because we're helping another agency out. It's the holidays, so a lot of people are on vacation. My negotiation team, we work, a few calls a month together with. I'm not super close with all of them, and then I go to work a murder with some of my teammates, and you're there all day long because you're serving a search warrant. I don't think I got home till like 2 a.m. on the 2nd of January that year to be able to go ahead and get a good night. And I think I must have slept like a day and a half probably after all that because you're just up. And from to get to your question about what we're doing today,
Mm.
what we're trying to do today is tell everybody it's okay to not be okay. But it's
Yeah.
also okay to share, like know that we're all in this together and you have to raise your hand. And it the stigma has been people make up these mental health health issues, so they get free time off of work, right? That's the stigma. Um, the other stigma is you're not gonna, because I'll tell you the day after I asked for help, I went in and I talked to my captain and I told him I needed mental health help. I talked to my lieutenant, I talked to all my co-surgeons to talk with them. And that was very scary for me because I did not know if I would like any one of them could have decided to put me on a fitness for duty. And when you get on that fitness for duty, now it's like you're one step from being done with your job. Like
Yeah.
you might not have this job any longer. Uh,
Yeah.
so, it needs to be okay. And the other thing is, from a financial standpoint, we talk about wellness all the time now, Todd. The community doesn't understand if we're going to do really wellness well and do like similar thing than the fire department, all fire departments are funded much greater than the police department.
Yeah. 100%. Yep.
And they run their calls differently. So if a
Yep.
community wants to, because communities, maybe they need to decide that we don't want officers going out on every cold theft,
Right.
that kind of thing. We only want them going at that's something that the stakeholders and the community members and the politicians all need to decide what's best for their community and be able to do that. But we're running because of the funding issues, these wellness programs and these fitness for duty things, and the way that we're able to offer free mental health services through very highly trained people that just deal with military and first responders. If we don't understand that that costs money, and maybe we need to look at the amount of officers that are assigned to an agency and go, you know, maybe we need to stop doing less with more and just get more officers in here and
Mhm.
find people that can do the job. Or maybe we decide, hey, maybe we don't need that graveyard shift. We don't need people working over graveyards, and we're gonna like if something happens, we'll call people out. That can happen in smaller communities, but like at the agent, I'm in a mid-sized agency, we could not do that. We
Yeah.
cover a large area where it needs policing services 24/7.
Yeah.
But we're down. Uh, People don't want to come, especially in Colorado. Qualified immunity has been taken away from every officer. If it's not on body worn camera, the jury instructions basically are to say that just assume the officer is lying about anything that happened if it's not on body worn camera. So from that standpoint, it's hard to say, hey, come work this job. You're going to have weird hours. You're going to have to work shift work, and everything is going to be Monday morning quarterbacked uh, that you do. And by the way, you're going to have a body worn camera running all the time. Like,
Yeah.
and they can pull your body worn camera at any time and see what you're doing. I think it's tremendously brave for anybody to do that. Like 9 times out of 10, people don't want to come to work and they look around to see where the surveillance cameras are. And they're worried about, do I need to get a mouse shaker to know that people can tell that I'm online working from home? People don't want to be surveilled all day long. Well, these officers are being surveilled all day long, and they're being surveilled when they're out on a traffic stop because people will stop and take video of it.
Yeah.
And there are all kinds of things going on, and it's tremendously dangerous because unfortunately we are dehumanized because people see us in our uniform.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's just in 9 times out of 10, if somebody tries to do harm to an officer, it's mostly because they're in a uniform, not because of that officer individually.
Yep.
And it's a hard thing to do. And it's unfortunate. Like all the bad things we see on the news are a small percentage of people that are doing these things. And yes, could have people intervened somewhere along the way before this happened? Most of the time, we're finding out that's correct, and that's unfortunate. And but we should be glad that these things have happened so we can have authentic conversations about what's going on in law enforcement. And I had just recently, uh, I had a teammate. They had a lot of things going on in their personal life, and they had had somebody close to them commit suicide.
Wow.
And uh, they were we followed up with them, making sure that they were getting the help that they needed, which they were, and they were doing it appropriately. And they still got overcome and had to leave. Like a simple mistake at work ended up being a big deal to them, and they ended up having to give one of their teammates their firearm before they went home.
Wow.
That's a step in the right direction. But some
Yeah.
people would take that as, hey, this person may or not be fit for duty. I'm going to say they did a great job of just identifying how they were feeling. They were
Yeah.
overcome at that moment in time. They needed to have, they needed to just take a moment. And I've gotten much better at this over time, but these things don't go away. I mean,
No.
they don't go away. And you see, as police officers, we go to people's places and homes and things like that on the very worst day that they're having. So, and there's a long list of things, but no one, I don't think anybody wants to go to a home where a child has committed suicide and have to deal with the parents,
Mm.
that the parents are just distraught. You don't
Yeah.
want to show up on a 4th of July when someone's mother has choked on a piece of meat and died out on the during the family 4th of July thing. These are
Yeah.
events that are real life events that I've dealt with. And
Yeah.
these, traffic accidents are horrible things. They like speed and what that does to just not just the car, like people gawk. I mean, great. Just be careful and slow down. Like,
Yeah.
because you don't want to be in that car when you get hit. It's just a whole bunch of they're just we see a lot of the stuff, and it takes a toll over time. And we've got to I can think of when I first went I the first time I went to therapy was after one of my teammates. They When I was new supervisor on patrol, we had an officer involved shooting, and I was the last officer to stay on scene. And I got and my job was to make sure that the fire department hosed down the whole area, made
Mm.
sure that all the things from the shooting, not the shell casings and things like that, but these are other
Right.
things,
Yeah.
get all hosed down. And I remember getting back in my car, Todd, and going, I just saw somebody get like the remnants of their life get washed down the sewer, like
Yeah.
down into a grate in a parking lot.
Yeah.
And that, how do you? I went and talked to somebody after that, but I wasn't even in the place where I was really truly asking for help. I just had feelings I need to talk about with people.
Yeah.
So to get back to your question, as leaders, we need to be trying to build authentic communication with the people that we lead. And like on my teams that I lead, for the supervisors in particular, if we talk about having authentic conversations, and then we ask one another, are you open to feedback right now? And if you're not open to feedback, it's like, nope, why don't you come back? Or, I'll let you know when I'm open to feedback, because we let
Yeah.
the emotion go away, and then we can come back together and talk about, what's going on, because emotions are going to be different because we're experiencing a high stress environment, bring up a lot of emotions. And it depends on what our biases are, how we grew up, what we've experienced in life. All these things are going to cause a different reaction in each one of us. And it might just be
Right.
like, holy shit, I was scared. And
Mm.
you get this other emotional reaction like, hey, you weren't close enough to me when we went through that door. So I'm pissed off at you, but I'm really thinking in my mind, um, holy shit, I was very scared and I felt like you weren't there for me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
having those type of conversations is what we're trying to do a better job about. And really, to be honest with you, that's why I'm out here talking and doing podcasts and doing what I'm doing
Mhm.
with TrueBold, is just being able to let people know it. We need to be talking about it, and we need to talk about all aspects of it. And we need to talk about funding. We need to talk about how this job is a hard job that we're doing.
That's right.
And it's not to toot my own horn. And um, That not at all. I just want policing to be much better than when I got in it in 2011. I want it to be, 20 years from now, maybe the first week or maybe even sooner, maybe the first week of, instead of it being all stress inoculation at the police academy, maybe the first week is, hey, we're talking better about, we're learning about how to communicate better with people. We're learning about how to communicate in tough times, how to give feedback, how to receive feedback, how how are we like to take personality tests so we can know, hey, we're predisposed to this or predisposed to that,
Yeah.
instead
Yeah.
of just yelling at them like and saying, hey, this is a tough job. You need to just pull your bootstraps up and do the job, and you better not go out on a scene and throw up because you're going to be pukey to everybody that is, you're that's how you're going to get your nickname. Um, so
It's
that's
all
very.
around us now, right, Matt? It's all around us. I mean, first of all, your throwdown right there was absolutely amazing. Thank you for everything you just shared and the true bold, right? I mean, it's your business and it resonates off of you're just so compassionate and honest and true and it's just so real. And that's what, like you said, we need to have real life conversations about all this. And it's a great point where you're talking about with the police academy or just those first onboarding days of teaching, like you and I were talking about offline, teaching somebody how to put their trauma in this fear out front that I always talk about, and then learning through time how to build those coping mechanisms up, that resilience, the spidey senses, on how to try to learn how to live and walk with all those scary things that you just talked about, right? All the traumatic events, that's all out here. You can't forget
Mhm,
it because when it gets back here, that's why people are up on the roof wanting to jump off. That's why people are hanging themselves. That's what happens when you're getting kicked in the back of the skull from your traumatic event over
mhm,
and over, and you cannot get it out here to keep pushing it. So, how do we learn as men, as women, especially strong people like our law enforcement community, our first responders, our nurses, our teachers? How do we learn how to keep our whatever that is trauma wise out in front of us? And I think that's a constant educational piece. I think it starts with like what you did, raising your hand saying, hey, I need to talk to somebody. And what's nice about the law enforcement community or first responder community is they're more focused on trying to find somebody that's relatable to you. So at
mhm,
least when you go in and talk to someone, you're not just talking to a, no offense to any regular therapist, but it's always important to find that relatable person. But like my buddy Brian Wood was on a task force in Southern California, and if there was a bad thing that went down, they had a group of officers that knew, okay, who knows him, who knows her,
mhm,
call them right now, make sure you get an hold of touch of the family. Let's make sure that that person knows they're okay or whatever that
mhm,
is. But sometimes, like in your case, that probably doesn't happen like you for 48 hours, and you're going 48 hours one after another. So
mhm,
it is, and you're not funded properly, and I think there's a lot of great organizations. There's so many great people like yourself that are opening up their voices with the experience that you have. You command a presence because you have walked through the battle. You're talking the talk. You know how to walk it. You've experienced it. You're relatable. And now you got all these younger generations coming up, to your point, having all these parameters put on him. Okay, you got cameras on you 24/7. You got all these things. You're basically called a liar until someone watches your video camera and then says, "Oh, okay, you are telling the truth." In in
mhm,
in a society that craves security, but yet we're ousting our men and women in blue that are providing the security. We're putting this kind of shell around them to allow them to do their job. So, my point is I think it all comes down to just education, willingness to say, I can be my lion. I'm fine. You're not,
mhm.
I'm tough. I've checked my tough box off. I've done my shit. I'm okay. But as far as my strength, but I need help with this area of my life that it's starting to unfold into my personal life. I'm having these weird thoughts. That's okay too. Like your partner or whoever that was that handed their gun over and said, I can't take this tonight, or you're not going to take this tonight. That's brave, right?
Hmm.
Doesn't mean that they can't do their job. It just means, hey, man, I got to reset. I need some
Hmm.
help. Get me straight. Get me my pals. Build your peer support group up where you know you can call those people up anytime. I got mine. I got 5 guys that are on me. Like they know anniversary's coming up to a bad situation. I know what they're doing. I know when bad stuff happens. We're all there together, right? I got my EMDR therapist, Diane, here in Plano, Texas. If I ever need to go back to her, I know I can get that, right? But it's just talking about it. I think conversations are awesome. The more people hear about someone like yourself sharing your story of strength and resilience, empowerment, how to really kind of build those internal mechanisms to learn how to cope with today's craziness, the better off we'll be. So
And that's the thing. Life is not a competition, Todd.
yeah,
That's the big thing is
yeah,
everybody in this space that I meet, that I network with, there's not a person that's competing. Like
yeah,
if there was a conference that went 90 days and they needed a speaker every hour of those 90 days, we would refer somebody else that we know, because you never know. I'm just trying to reach one person. Like I'm just hoping one person sees this and maybe makes a change in their life
right.
to ask for help. And that's all I
Yeah.
can do. And I'm just trying to be the mentor that I always wanted to myself and to my team and to the people that I know today and are in my circle.
Man, I'm just really honored to know you. Um, just you got a fan over here in Frisco, Texas that is pulling for you and your staff there and your whole department and hoping that this reaches more than just one person and that they get up and follow you. So let's talk about that. I know throughout the podcast, we've had your uh, web link and information kind of flashing on the screens. But if someone wants to get a hold of you, are you getting out? You're speaking.
I'm doing I'm
Yeah,
doing a I have a 4 hour training that talks about creating an innovative team and creative team through the Believe. I use that acronym to be able
hmm,
to do that. So I offer that, and then I've got a couple of workbooks online on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's the best place to go for me. So if you're on LinkedIn, it's Matt-Davis-M11007. That's my badge number. 11007 is my badge number.
no
So,
way.
yeah.
That's awesome.
So you can reach me there.
Yeah,
Also, if my email is mdavis@true-boldness.com. So you can reach out to me there as well. But I'm just trying to get out there, and
yeah,
I would love to come and speak to your organization, tell my story, and hopefully it resonates with somebody out there. And it's relatively new. The business started as a written paper that I did in my classes, and now a year later, it's a real thing. It's an LLC, and
yeah.
I've gotten to do 3 or 4 different trainings at different places. And I just recently did some for our training officers at my home organization, which really helped me overcome my imposter theory because syndrome. Because I'm just waiting for somebody to jump up and say, "Hey, you're full of shit," but
Hmm.
that did not happen. And so just trying to be out there and have authentic conversations. None of my stuff is earth-shattering stuff. And I love to read about leadership. I'm a student of leadership now, and I'm just always listening and reading different leadership books, and they're all saying the same thing, Todd.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
need to be authentic. We need to be able to communicate with each other effectively. Life is not a competition, and we need to be focused on ourselves and understand what we can control and what we can't control.
That's right. We need more warrior leaders out there in the space. Not being afraid to lead with love, not be afraid to lead. It's strong. I don't think anybody's ever going to tell you that you're a weak person, that you haven't done anything strong in your life. You have. You got all the accolades written down on it. I mean, you can give someone a resume if you want, but you don't need to do that. You can tell when you walk, you're walking tall, and I think that's super important. So, Thank you so much for being on this podcast. And I know we're going to cut it up. There's going to be all little bite-sized pieces
Great.
going out. But any way that I know I personally can help you in amplifying your voice, I'm in. So
Yeah, let me know. And next time I'm in Texas, I'll hit you up when I'm there for a little bit of time, and I'll come up Frisco way and we'll have lunch or something.
Hey, we got Hutchins barbecue up here, and it's pretty good. So
Okay. Well, I'm always looking for a good place. And I've gone to Panther City in down in Fort Worth, but I have not been to Hutchins Barbecue. So
all right, well, let's go.
all
So
right, we'll plan on it.
thank you, sir, very much.
Hey, thanks.
Going in, yeah, to help us out right. Reach out and touch the sky. Boy, you with me, no way for night. Storm back to, yes, spirit back to.